Hi, everyone. I'm Gold Derby News and Features Editor Ray Richmond, and I'm here today with Oliver Platt, who portrays Uncle Jimmy Cicero Kalinowski on the multiple Emmy-winning FX hit The Bear. So, Oliver, you had a small but key role on the series in the first season that they decided to expand in the second season of the show. Am I allowed to ask if it expands again in season 3? Does your NDA allow you to answer that, or would you have to kill me?
I didn't get any explicit instructions about that one. I would say not necessarily, but it's it's quality over quantity maybe. But we'll see. Honestly, it's like I was so the amazing thing about Chris's writing is that it's incredibly muscular and efficient. And the remarkable thing about Cicero's story in the second season is I'm actually kind of not there a whole heck of a lot, and yet, and I was as surprised by this as anybody when I finally saw the season. There's definitely a beginning and a middle and an end, and to Cicero's arc, and in a way that I mean, I think at first I was like, the feedback that I was getting was like I was like, well, what do you, before I saw it, I was like, what are you talking about? I'm not in it that much. And then I saw, I mean, again, there's a beginning, a middle, and an end. And I mean, I can only credit Chris with, again, he gets so many mouths to feed, and a great writer is able to, you know, uh, there are no insignificant characters to a great writer, or a great writer is able to dimensionalize, all of his all of his people, so to speak.
And you really are incorporated in a profound way. You're right. It doesn't just look like, oh, we decided to give Oliver a side role on the show. No, you're intrinsic to the plot and all the development and everything. It's very organic. And how did it come to you, Oliver? I mean, it isn't as if you were looking for work.
It was the craziest thing. I mean, it literally just sort of landed in my lap. I work on Chicago Med in
Right.
Chicago, and all of a sudden I was sent this script that shot in Chicago. Chris, I'm sure he's fibbing. Chris claims that he didn't know that I was in Chicago, but it literally Ray, it shoots on the same freaking lot. I had a couple of times during the second season, I would sort of start the day as a kindly psychiatrist, and then step down out of one trailer, walk about 200 yards, and become a kind of sketchy, mysterious, I don't know, neighborhood character with a heart of gold, shall we say? I don't know.
Yeah. So your Dr. Charles to begin the day and Cicero to end it.
Just a couple times, but that was it was kind of fun, actually, and I mean, and like, who should be so lucky? I'm the luckiest guy in showbiz.
Did Chris Storer, the creator and co-showrunner of the show, create Uncle Jimmy with you in mind?
I have no idea. I can't imagine. I don't think so, actually, because I think that The Bear might have originally been a movie script.
That it was.
Yeah, a while ago. So, I kind of, I mean, you have to ask him, but I kind of doubt it.
So Cicero is really sort of the money man. 300,000 here, 500,000 there. Without you, there would be no restaurant, it's safe to say. But at least you got a chocolate banana for your trip.
Exactly. And at the end, I will say, at the end of season 2, things are looking up. I mean, in terms of, I mean, Carmy does float me this amazing deal, right? He kind of says, he goes, okay, look, because they're like, not only are they coming to me in the first scene of the season, and they're saying, I'm like, let me get this straight. So you, not only did you find my original $300,000, and you're only telling me now, but you're asking me for 500 more. And they go, yeah, that's
Take
what we're
some
doing.
balls, really.
Yeah, it does, and which you can imagine Cicero's probably impressed with, right? But then he says, "Hey, look, if this doesn't work, you would give it a lot back." And as a businessman, how can he? And yet, that's what's so wonderful about the character too, is he actually really wants him to succeed. He gets to sort of act all tough and like, yeah, man, yeah, I guess I'll take the deal. But he wants him to succeed. He wants this thing to work because they're his kids. I think that whatever the backstory is, he felt tremendous. He just feels a responsibility. They're sort of like, their deadbeat dad took off on him, and I think that he's very, very in his own way, very invested in their well being and in their success.
And but if it doesn't work out, you get the lot, and the lot's probably worth a couple mil, right?
Yeah, supposedly.
See, that's the thing about there, Oliver, is you know, it's such amazing writing and beautiful acting and everything. I mean, it's all top notch, first class. That I really have trouble differentiating between fantasy and reality. I really feel like if I went to Chicago, I would somehow be able to find this restaurant and everyone would be there. And that's a real testament to everybody.
I mean, that the season one, that was the actual that's the real Mr. Beef, right? That was that was the restaurant that Chris worked in after school as a teenager, and but yeah, I mean, I couldn't agree more about the writing. The writing, I think, is just flat out astonishing, and I think he's like a warlock. You know what I mean? I don't know how the hell he does it. He's also just a phenomenally agreeable, pleasant dude to hang around with. I mean, it's really a little weird, honestly.
The only quibble I have with Dare, Oliver, is that it's cast as a comedy for Emmy purposes, and it doesn't strike me as a. I know that that's more, and this it isn't your call, of course, but I know that it's more the time frame, the fact that it's relatively a half an hour for most episodes, which is the normal comedy length. But I guess that's one of those quirks in the system.
I think. Listen, obviously, this is not you're not the first time I heard this. And I think you're probably right that it's format that is sort of dictating that. But I also want to think that it's also about sort of this natural evolution of writing in an era when it's certainly when you're on streaming platforms, it's just about quality, right? And the interesting thing for me was that in the first season, I was just in two episodes, the second and the fourth, I believe. So I had just asked to read those episodes that came before, and so and if you think about that first season, it's much more. It doesn't start to get really, it, it doesn't start to get intense and dark and just much more, I don't know, dimensionalized in terms of like all of these different colors, right? Until the end of the season, and I was just shocked. Well, I was stood there with my mouth on the floor watching the rest of the show, that season. But I mean, honestly, I don't know a great comedy that isn't shot through with fear, loathing, stress, or a great drama that doesn't have a healthy sense of irony. You know what I mean? So I think this natural fusing of styles happening here. But you wouldn't be wrong to say comedy, because in a way it's sort of just call it a comedy.
Right.
In a weird way sort of diminishes it, and yet I think it can be really funny, but it's also incredibly moving and mysterious and all those other things.
Absolutely, and you do both. I mean, you're doing comedy and drama almost simultaneously. What I love about Jimmy, Oliver, is that you aren't sure what his true motives are. I mean, which again is a testament to the writing. If he's sinister or loving and genuine, or all of the above, or what.
It's so much fun, Ray, for exactly that reason, and again with great writing, you're just doing it. You're not thinking about if am I in a comedy or a drama, am I in the you just, once you when you trust a writer like you come to trust Chris, you just sort of like get on the horsey and you ride. And he's also, when you're just surrounded by like the acting and the cat, another thing that I think that Chris has a really great genius for, of course, with the help of Jeannie Bacharach, the wonderful casting directors, that Chris himself has extraordinary instinct for casting. I mean, one of the things for me about watching the first season, I was like, when we went back to start working on the second season, my first day, I was so excited to meet all of these people, because I never got to work in the kitchen with the crew or anything like that. I got to work with Eben and Jeremy. Basically, I hadn't even met Io or Liza or anybody, and I'm not kidding. I was like starstruck. I was like, guys, I'm so excited to meet them because this environment, I've thought about it a lot, and I because I think a lot of us were just like sort of really taken aback by the contact that the show made, by the traction it got, and I think that it's because it's about actually about the creation of a family. You know what I mean? It's about the creation of a family, and in 2022, we're all just coming out of the pandemic. Everybody, we just needed desperately, and it was a story like that, and yet it was sort of sly, and I mean, you had to think about that. I had to think about it to go, oh, that's one of the things why people love this show, aside from the fact that it's deeply entertaining, and but that's also, to also read about how people who actually had worked in restaurants were like, I got serious PTSD watching this thing. I can't binge it. They loved it for its accuracy, but they're like, it's so intense.
It is so
Anyway,
intense. But have you ever, Oliver, been part of a project that so captured the zeitgeist as this one has? I mean, I know people who
not
are
so
literally,
unexpectedly. I
there
mean,
are people who are
honestly,
losing their minds because they have to wait till June 27th for season 3 to drop.
I think the only show that I've worked on, and it's such a different time, but that it was so connected to what was going on, to the zeitgeist, the way it was, when I did an arc on the West Wing, and I was working on it at sort of like at arguably the height, because Aaron actually only worked on the show 3 or 4 years, and it was sort of the end of the second season, beginning of the third, which a lot of people think was sort of like a really amazing run on the show, and yeah, that was the only other time. But again, remember, that was like a back when when broadcast television was still actually a going thing. You know what I mean? And there was millions and millions and millions of people tuning in. And that a show didn't have to find. I mean, the most remarkable thing about The Bear is that it just came, for all intents and purposes, came out of nowhere. You know what I mean? It's a little show, on obvious FX is really talented programmers, right? But who knew? I don't think, honestly, if you ask them, I think they didn't know.
Oh, I
I
think
know
they were shocked that it
they were
became
shocked.
this
I know
thing
they
out of the
loved
gate.
it. Right. I know they loved it, but there's no guarantee that just because you love it, that they loved it, other people would.
Yeah, but on along those same lines, Oliver, I've never seen anything quite like the Fishes episode last season. It's like this embarrassment of riches. Ooh, there's Oliver. Ooh, there's Jamie Lee Curtis and Bob Odenkirk and Sarah Paulson and John Mulaney, and it never stopped. It's I was waiting for Tom Cruise and Meryl Streep to drop by next.
And but yet, well, what's so deft about it is it like the stunt casting like that can be very distracting, but Chris was so smart about the way he introduced them all. It's like he allowed you to get used to them, if you will, before they really kicked, before stuff got real. And also, they're also goddamn good. You immediately forgot, that you were what their real names were. But then here's the crazy thing about Fishes. It is, for me, it is actually followed by what I think. Sorry, I should have my You're
That's
not seeing
okay.
those annoying notifications.
You have the curse of too much hair.
But it's followed by, for me, what is actually the greatest episode, perhaps the greatest episode of television that I've ever seen in my life, which is Forks, right? Which is the one after where, I mean, that literally had me like, I was just deeply grateful that I was watching it uh, alone in my residence, so that I could like, because it made me cry, it made me bawl, made me make all these really embarrassing animal noises. I was just really glad that nobody was around in the house to listen. But here
Wow.
you have Fishes, and let me tell you, right, when I read Fishes, I'm like, that's one of the best episodes of television that I've ever read. And then it actually, but by the way, no guarantee that just because it reads that way that it's gonna play that way. But then it certainly seemed to. And the thing is, I actually hadn't read Forks, and so I was, I don't know. I think that the whole season is just some weird, mysterious, kind of bizarre television
It,
miracle.
it was alchemy, yeah, and I agree with you about Forks too. It's like that's such an amazing platform for Evan, and
Oh,
but how does Chris Storer get all these people? Or do they come to him? Does everybody just say yes now because of the show has?
oh, I think so. I think so. Uh, we had dinner. Chris and I had dinner before we started shooting the second season. And I'm like, he was like, you're not going to believe, these incoming calls I'm getting, Um, and he told me that he didn't want to tell me. At the time, he was being coy about who was going to play Donna. And of course, Jamie Lee just like crushed that.
Oh my gosh!
And I think I think she had literally just won, an Oscar. But he told me about Sarah and Bob, and I'm like, holy moly, and yet, as an actor, it's like what all we're really looking for is writing like that. You know what I mean? That's all. What's all because without, it's like we really can only be as good as the writing, if we're lucky. But the writing's got to be there, and it's like it's remarkable stuff, truly
And you're
remarkable
right.
stuff.
It didn't feel like stunt casting, even despite all the names and faces. Um, Maybe just to switch gears briefly before we sign off here, Oliver. You've had this steady job, meanwhile, going on a decade now on Chicago Med as the head of the psychiatry department. How great has that been, being a hit series that brings this kind of consistent work?
It's been wonderful. I wasn't planning to be in Chicago that long. And but Dick, he called me up and said, I'm doing this hospital show, and there's a role for a psychiatrist in it. He said, and there's never been a psychiatrist in a show like this before. And I was like, really? Like, not even like, ER or St. Elsewhere, or those groovy, those fantastic sort of. And he goes, no, and there's a reason that there wasn't. But he said, but I think the world is ready. And what he meant is that and he was right, by the way, but that the people weren't ready to talk about mental health on a broader, um,
Mainstream level.
level, exactly. And you know what, he was absolutely right. And so on one hand, I love going to work. We have the most amazing cast and crew, and but it is very rewarding to be telling stories that destigmatize mental health issues on a show that 10 million people, give or take, watch every week. And that's a cool thing. And the show, I mean, I hope everybody in the cast thinks that they've got the best part. I think I just love telling these stories. Are mental health issues are mysterious and complex. There's no such thing as you can't, there's no such thing as you can't use an X-ray to diagnose nervous breakdown, right? I mean, it's like it's much more abstract uh field in terms of diagnostically anyway, and also for treatment. So anyway, I just feel like I feel very lucky. I feel like actually one of the lucky right now, one of the luckiest people in the showbiz, because I get to work on Med, and then I also get to work on the Bear and play these two, incredibly different characters.
Well, you're incredibly talented, and you've earned the right uh,
Well, you're very kind.
over such a rich and eclectic career. It's about time guys like you got the kind of breaks you continue to get. You create your own, I think.
Oh, well,
Um,
that's nice of you to say.
we're going to actually leave things there. The first two seasons of The Bear are streaming on Hulu, and they'll be joined by a third season on June 27th. Oliver Platt, it's been an honor. Best of luck to you this Emmy season, and thanks for joining us at Gold Derby.
Thanks so much, Ray. It's been a pleasure.